Hey fans, how you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Ayin Dal, Daf 74 of Masechet Nedarim, friends. Well, remember, like, when we were learning Yavamis, and it was all about Yavamis? Friends, take out your brains today. Says the Mishnah on Daf Ayin Dal, Amud Aleph, Shomeres Yavam. Bein li yavam echad, bein l'shnei yavamin, Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yofer, Rabbi Yeshua Omer le'echad, aval lo l'shnayim, Rabbi Akiva Omer lo le'echad v'lo l'shnayim. Woo! My oh my! Alright, who wants to explain that? Wow. Start over. Shomeres yavam. Oy vavoy. Alright, Reuven is married to Sarah. Reuven dies. Sarah now needs to do Yibum with Shimon. Whew. Wow. Just like that. We're back in Masechet Yavamis. Man, we're going to talk about Mimer today. We're going to talk about Zikas. We're going to talk about Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Sarah, Rivka, brothers, sisters. Woo. Here we go. Shomeres Yavam. So, oh my gosh. Reuven's married to Sarah. Reuven dies. Sarah needs to do even with Shimon. Ben Yavam Echad. So whether there's just Shimon, Ben Shnei Yavamin, or whether there's Oichid Levi, right? Whether there were three brothers, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, and Reuven's married to Sarah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yofer. So Rabbi Eliezer says that you can do Afaris Nadar when there's a Shomeres Yav, right? When there's a Yibum situation. So Reuven's out of the picture, but Shimon, maybe Levi also, or there could still be Afaris Nadar. We're going to have to explain exactly what the Ukimta is, exactly what we're talking about. Rabbi Yeshua says, look, if there's only Shimon, there's no Levi, if there's only a Shimon, so then Beseda Reuven dies, Shimon needs to do Yibum with Sarah. In the meantime, he could do Afaris Nedarim. But if there were two, right, if Reuven died and now there's Shimon and Levi, there's two brothers, so then nobody could do Afaris Nedarim. Rabbi Akiva Omer says, Rabbi Akiva lo lecha v'lo l'shnayim, whereas Rabbi Akiva says, I don't care if it's just Shimon, I don't care if it's Shimon and Levi, there's no Afaris Nedarim. Omer Rabbi Eliezer, now Rabbi Eliezer, who says that whether it's just Shimon, whether it's Shimon and Levi, there is Afaris Nedarim. He says, look, ma'im isha shekano hu la'atzmo hareu mefer nidareo. Look, if he, a fellow of flesh and blood, is mikadesh a woman, and now he gets engaged, and he can do Afaris Nedarim. Isha shehiknu lo min hashamayim, a wife who they gave him from the heavens, right? Shimon didn't betroth Sarah. The Eibishter made the shidduch by killing Reuven. Eino din sheyofer nidareo. So certainly, if it's min hashamayim, if it's from the heavens, he should be able to do Afaris Nedarim. If when by his own mortal means he's privileged, I guess you could say, to do Afaris Nedarim. So certainly when it comes to something that comes from God, who'd be able to, I don't think privilege is the right word, but sort of capable of doing, I don't know what the right word is, but if it comes from God, then certainly he'll have that ability to do Afaris Nedarim. Rabbi Akiva counters. Loim omad biisha shekanu hu le'atzmo shein lacherim ba rishus. But the thing is, there's a big difference between Kiddushin and Yibum. That when a fellow is mikadesh a woman, so there's only a relationship between him and that woman. No other man has any sort of relationship with that woman, right? Right? If Reuven is mikadesh Sarah, so that's it. Any other Shimons and Levis and whoever it might be in the world are out of the picture. Tomar biisha shiknu lo min hashamayim. You can't compare that to Yibum, where sheyesh la'acherim barishus, that there's other people there as well. So, meaning if you have Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, and Reuven dies, so now actually both Shimon and Levi have equal connection to Sarah. So meaning when it comes to Kiddushin, if you have a guy named Reuven and he's Mekadesh a girl named Sarah, so then it's exclusive between the two of them. But when it comes to Yibum, if Reuven dies and he's got two brothers, Shimon and Levi, so then the relationship between Sarah and the brothers is not exclusive. It's between Shimon and Levi. Amalei Rabbi Yoshua, so Rabbi Yoshua says to Rabbi Akiva, look, Akiva dvarecha b'shnei Yevamin beseder. So when there's two brothers, sure, it's right. Then there's more than one. What about if it's just one? What about if it's just one? What if Reuven has one brother, Shimon? Reuven dies, and then there's there's Yibum between Shimon and Sarah. So then, it's not right. It's exclusive. There's no other people involved, Darton. Amar lo. So Rabbi Akiva responds to Yeshua, Eina Yavam Gemura liyavam kshem sharusa Gemura liisha. Rabbi Akiva, and the Gemara is going to explain. Rabbi Akiva says yes, but still, the relationship between a betrothed woman and her fiance is different than the relationship between a yavam and a yavama. The Gemara is going to explain. I guess maybe I'll say now that Kilu, when it comes to Arusa, right, a Narma Arasa is Beskila, right? If she has a relationship with somebody else, it's Beskila, with Masha Einkem, which is not the case by Yavama. So we see that there are ways that which Erisin is actually more stringent and more significant than Yibum, in that there's Skila, right? If there's an unsanctioned, right, an extra betrothal relationships, and there's Skila. Masha Ein Kain, which is not the case by Shomeris Yavam and a Yavam, and therefore also when it comes to in Arusa, so there's Afaris Nedarim, but not by Yibum, says Rabbi Akiva. Says the Gemara. Bishlam Rabbi Akiva. Okay, I understand Rabbi Akiva's position, right? Rabbi Akiva says that there's no Afaris Nedarim at all. Sover Ein Zika. He says that there's no Zika, right? Right? Getting back to Masechta Yavamis. Zika. That the Shaila is, when Reuven dies, is there a relationship? Is there any kind of connection between, is there any kind of melee connection between Shimon and Sarah? So I understand Rabbi Akiva, he says, look, no, there isn't. Ein Zika, there's no inherent connection, and therefore there's no Afaris Nedarim. Right? Shimon can't be made for Sarah's Nedarim because there's no Zika, there's no connection there. Rabbi Yoshua Savar, Yesh Zika. Rabbi Yoshua says that there is a Zika. However, Ein Breira. You have to add those words. Ein Breira, but there's no Breira. Right? So meaning, so Rabbi Yoshua says there is a Zika, and therefore he says if Reuven dies and there's only one brother, Shimon, so then there's a Zika between Shimon and Sarah, and therefore there's Afaris Nedarim. But if there are two brothers, so if Reuben dies and there's Shimon and Levi, so then we say Ein Breira, right? We can't know which one is right? Breira is the photoshopping, right? So we can't just say that if one of them does Afaris Nedarim, then Memela retroactively he's the one that there was a Zika between. No, it doesn't work like that. And therefore, Rabbi Yoshua would say if there's one brother, so then we say that there's Zika and there's Afaris Nedarim. But if there are two brothers, so then wait again. If there's one brother, so we say that there is Zika and therefore there is Afaris Nedarim. But if there are two brothers, then we can't know which one is able to do the Afaris Nedarim, and therefore you can't do Afaris Nedarim. Rabbi Eliezer, but according to Rabbi Eliezer, my time. Why does Rabbi Eliezer say that there is Hafaris Nedarim? Why does he say that there is Hafaris Nedarim? Yesh Zika, Ein Breira. Even if you're going to say that there is a Zika, but we can't say, right? We wouldn't say that there's Breira. And therefore, if Reuven dies and there's Shimon and Levi, how can Rabbi Eliezer explain that there's Hafaris Nedarim? But how do we know which one the Zika is for? And you can't just say that whoever does Afaris Nedarim, then retroactively that was the one who had the Zika. Ein Breira. So Omer Reb Ami, this is like a real daf. I mean, friends, we've gotten used to, this is already at 10.5 minutes. I think we've been used to we're already done by 10.5 minutes. Friends, we're just getting started over here. This is like a real daf, Everybody probably came in today expecting, it's going to be another 3-minute daf. No way, no how. This is a real daf. Where am I again? Omer Reb Ami, says Reb Ami, Kigon She'asaba, Maimer. Well, it's talking about where Shimon, or Levi, whoever, let's say Shimon, did Maimer. Who can remind me what Maimer is? Shimon gives Kesef Kiddushin to Sarah, right? So there's Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Reuven dies. Now Sarah has to do Yibum with either Shimon or Levi. Shimon then gives her a Shaveh Pruta, gives her Kesef Kiddushin. So now, and that's what's called Maimer. So once he does Maimer, so then he can also do Afaris Nedarim. Rabbi Eliezer Sav like Beis Shammai, and Rabbi Eliezer was like Beis Shammai, the Amay that they say, Maimer Konya Kinyan Gomer, that Maimer makes a proper Kinyan, and therefore it's like they're married. They're like the mamish married. He could be made for by himself, right? So when Shimon does a Maimer with Sarah, it's like they're married, and therefore he could do a Faris Nedarim. Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Yoshua responds to Rabbi Eliezer, and he says, look, don't tell me that when Shimon does Maimer with Sarah, it's like an official, real thing, and therefore he could do a Faris Nedarim. Yeah, right. Hanemile b'chad yavam. That, maybe that makes sense when there's one Yavam, when it's only Shimon, but Aval b'shnei Yavamin, if it's Shimon and Levi, you would not be able to be made for Nedarim, because mi'ika midi, is there anything d'chi asi achui aser ole b'bio begito mefer? I don't understand, says Rabbi Yeshua. If Reuven dies and there's Shimon and Levi, and Shimon does Maimer with Sarah, that's not all that. It's not as significant as you're making it out to be, says Rabbi Yoshua, because after all, even if Shimon does Maimer with Sarah and gives her Kesef Kiddushin, if Levi had Bia with her, or if Levi gave her a get, Shimon would be no longer able to do Yibum with Sarah, right? So therefore, says Rabbi Yoshua, it's very sweet that Shimon does Yibum with does Maimer with Sarah. And we want to say that it's like the Beis Shammai who says that it's a whole official thing. But says Rabbi Yeshua, at the end of the day, if Levi had Bia with Sarah or gave her a get, Shimon would not be able to Yibum with her anymore. And therefore, says Rabbi Yeshua, it's not significant, and the connection between Shimon and Sarah is not significant enough to allow Shimon to be made for her Nedarim. Fine. Rabbi Akiva Savar, and Rabbi Akiva holds Ein Zika. He says, look, Rabbi Akiva says that there is no Zika between Sarah and any of the brothers at all, and Maimer doesn't make a difference, and therefore there's no Afaris Nedarim at all. Ula Rabbi Lazar, not Rabbi Eliezer from the Mishnah, according to Rabbi Lazar, to Amr Maimer le Beis Shammai ein kone ela lidchos b'tzogim ma'ika le meimar ba para para para. Okay, so we wanted to say that according to Rabbi Eliezer, if Shimon does Maimer with Sarah, so that's significant. It's like they're married. He holds like Beis Shammai, who says that it makes a kinyan gomer, and therefore Shimon can be made for her Nedarim. But Frek the Gemara, what about according to Rabbi Lazar, who says that actually when Beis Shammai says that Maimer does a kinyan gomer, that's only lidchos b'tzogit. What does that mean? Do you really want to know what it means? Or should we just go weiter? Okay, fine. You want to know what it means. That's good. Very inquisitive. Okie dokie. Reuven, Shimon, Levi. They all brothers. Sarah and Rivka, sisters. Reuven is married to Sarah. Shimon is married to Rivka. Friends, does this take you back a few months? Haha, you thought that you were done. Nope. Okay, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, brothers, Sarah and Rivka, sisters. Reuven's married to Sarah, Shimon's married to Rivka. Reuven dies. Levi does mimer with Sarah. Shimon dies. So now, here's the thing. Levi hasn't done Yibum with Sarah, but he's done mimer with Sarah. And we're saying from the fact that Levi has done mimer with Sarah, well then that makes Rivka, whose husband Shimon died, Rivka is Achos Kukaso. Rivka is the sister of Sarah, who has a zika with Levi because of the mimer, and therefore Rivka doesn't need to worry about Yibum or anything like that. So according to Rabbi Lazar, who says that the only significance of mimer according to Beis Shammai is so that in the situation of the brothers and the sisters and the marriages and the Yibums and the mimers, Rivka wouldn't need to do, is off the hook and she can go and live her best life. So according to that, according to Rabbi Eliezer, when Shimon does mimer with Sarah, it's not all that significant and you shouldn't be able to do afaris nedarim. So, but my skin here, what we're talking about, kigon she'amad badin, uvarach v'eschayv l'mazonis. Oh, so says the Gemara, we could say it's talking about where Shimon did mimer with Sarah, but then he was dragging his feet and he wasn't doing yibum, so then they took him to Bezdin, and Bezdin said, and then he ran away, and Bezdin made him responsible now to pay for her mizonis. And as we saw in the previous Mishnah, according to Rabbi Eliezer, once he has to pay once he's chayav for mizonis, so then he can also be made for the nedarim. Uchder Pinchas, and like Rabbi Pinchas, the mishmei the Rav the Amar kol neder, so that's ba'alei neder, is that any woman who makes a neder, it's with the intention of her husband, and therefore he can be made for the nedarim. Tanan, we learn in our Mishnah, Omer Beliezer says, Beliezer umayim isha shekona la'atzmo hareyu made for nedarel. Right, Rabbi Eliezer responded to Rabbi Akiva, and he says, look, if a woman, right, when a fellow is mekadesh a woman himself, flesh and blood, hareyu made for nedarel, and he's entitled, maybe is that the word? That's maybe the word I was thinking of earlier. Entitled to be made for nedarim, isha sheiknu lo min hashamayim, that when it comes to yibum, where the relationship is from God, in udinshe made for nedarim, certainly he should be entitled to be made for her nedarim. V'ibisha also ba mimer. In fact, the Gemara, if it's like Rabbi Ami that we're talking about, where he did mimer, kono la'atzmohu, then it's not that it was very spiritual, that the relationship it came from God. Wow, what a zivug hagun came mamish from the Eibishter. It was like the splitting of the sea. He did it. He did mimer. He gave her kesef kedushin. What are we saying, right? That sheiknu min hashamayim, so spiritual. The guy did mimer. Shekona la'atzmo yedei shemayim. Yeah, but he did mimer. He was kona la'atzmo. He did mimer. He gave kesef kedushin, but still, the connection between Shimon and Sarah came from God because God took care of Reuven. Tivsho debai Rabba. So now let's answer Rabba's kasha. Maimer leVeis Shammai erisin osa nisuin osa. So according to Beis Shammai, Rabba asks, according to Beis Shammai, when a fellow does mimer, does it make like a status of erisin or a status of nisuin? Tivsho the nisuin osa. So let's say that it makes nisuin. The erisin osa, because if it's only erisin otana nair marosa aviu uvayla mefir nedarel, that a nair marosa, i.e. by erisin, then the fiance can't be made for the nedarim alone. He needs to be made for the nedarim with the father. Now we're assuming that according to Rabbi Eliezer, when we say that by the situation of Yibum, when Reuven dies, then we say that Shimon does mimer with Sarah, and then he can be made for the nedarim. We're assuming that according to Rabbi Eliezer means he can be made for nedarim alone. So if you made for Nedarim alone, so it sounds like the mimer is actually as a status of mamish kiddushin, of mamish nisuin. Therefore, it can be made for Nedarim alone. No, when it says, when Rabbi Eliezer says that by mimer Shimon cannot be made for Nedarim, it doesn't mean by himself. It means together with the father, and therefore actually mimer according to Beis Shammai would be erisin and not nisuin. Says the Gemara, Tanya Kavose Tanya Kavose Dirabami Kirabami Tanya Kavose Dirabami, right? Yeah, Dirabami. Tanya Kavose Dirabami. So we have a brisa supporting Rabami who says that according to Rabbi Eliezer, it's talking about where Shimon did mimer. Shomeres Yavam, okay, when it comes to this even situation, Ben Yavam Echad Ben Shnei Yavamin, whether it's just Shimon or whether it's Shimon and Levi. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yafer, Rabbi Eliezer says that there is Afaris Nedarim. Rabbi Yoshua Omer Le'echav Lo L'Shnayim. Rabbi Yoshua says that if it's just Shimon, then yes, there's Afaris Nedarim, but if it's Shimon and Levi, then no. Rabbi Akiva Omer says Rabbi Akiva Lo Le'echav Lo L'Shnayim, that no, there's no Afaris Nedarim, whether it's just Shimon, whether it's Shimon and Levi. Omer Rabbi Eliezer says Rabbi Eliezer Umayim Isha She'ein Lo Chelik Ba Ad Shelo Tava L'Shuso. That says Rabbi Eliezer, look, when it comes to regular Kiddushin, prior to Kiddushin, there's absolutely no relationship between this fellow and the woman that that he's going to be Makadosh, right? If we say a guy named Ruvain and a girl named Sarah, prior to Kiddushin, there's absolutely no relationship between them officially. Now he does Kiddushin, and now Mishabas L'Shuso wants to do Kiddushin, Nigmara Lo. So now he could do Afaris Nedarim. Isha sheyesh lo chelek ad shelo tava l'Shuso. But when it comes to Yibum, where even prior to mimer, there's already a zika, that immediately when Ruvain dies, there's already a zika between Sarah and Shimon, and then he does mimer. Mishabas l'Shuso enu dinche tigmar lo. So certainly when he does mimer, after there was already a zika, certainly then he should be able to do Afaris Nedarim. Right? By regular Kiddushin, there's no initial connection prior to the Kiddushin, and he can do Afaris Nedarim. So here, by the time he's giving Maimer, there was already a Zika, certainly he should be able to do Afaris Nedarim. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva responds to Rabbi Eliezer, Loim Amart B'isha Shekanuhu Le'atzmo, that says Rabbi Akiva to Rabbi Eliezer that when it comes to regular Kiddushin, Shekashem She'ein Lo Chelek Ba, Kach Ein Lacherim Chelek Ba, that when it comes to regular Kiddushin, prior to the Kiddushin, just like he had no connection, official connection to her, neither did anybody else. Tomar Be'isha Shiknu Lo Min HaShamayim, you're going to compare that to Yibum. Shekashim She'esh Lo Ima Chelek, Kach Yesh Lacherim Chelek Ba, that just like Shimon has a connection to Sarah, so does Levi. Prior to the mimer, he wasn't the only, right? Not only did he have a connection, Levi also had a connection. Amalo, Rabbi Yoshua says to Rabbi Akiva, Divarecha b'shnei vamin, will that only make sense if they're Shimon and Levi? Mata meishav al yav mechod. But what would you say about if it was just Shimon? Nobody else has a connection to Sarah. Omar lei, kul mchilaknu al yav mechod, val shnei yavamin, ben shasa maimer, ben shalosa b'maimer. So Rabbi Akiva responds to Rabbi Yoshua, he says, look, we didn't make any kind of distinction whether it's one Yavam or whether there's two Yavamin, whether there was mimer or not. That we're not making distinctions between one or two Yavams. So here also, that we're not going to be making any chilukim whether it's one Yavam or two Yavams. There's not going to be any Afaris Nedarim. Uchshar Divarim Kein Nedarim. And also with regard to other things, so too is Nedarim. We're going to explain what those other things are, though the Mishnah, we already started in the Mishnah earlier. B'lashon Azai Amar Ben Azai, and Ben Azai said the following, Chaval Alecha Ben Azai, Shelo Shemashta Rabbi Akiva. Right, it's chaval to you, Ben Azai, that you did not spend more time properly with Rabbi Akiva. My Tani Kavasa de Rabbi Ami. So how does this support Reb Ami, who says that according to Rabbi Eliezer, it's talking about where Shimon did Maimer? Well, firstly, Dikatani ben also b'Maimer, ben Shelo also b'Maimer. Right, from the fact that Rabbi Akiva responds to Rabbi Yeshua and he says, look, I don't make any chilukim, whether it's just Shimon or if it's Shimon or Levi, whether Shimon did Maimer or whether Shimon didn't do Maimer. So clearly we're talking about Maimer over here, where there was Maimer. So that's one support for Rabbi Ami. Inami, alternatively, Mereshi Dikatani Mishabas L'Shuso Nigmira Lo, that we said, right, in Rabbi Eliezer's proof, that by Yibum, where there was already a Zika between Shimon and Sarah, and then he does Maimer with her, right? Right, Mishanichus L'Shuso Nigmira Lo, that from once he does Maimer essentially with her, so now he should be able to do Hafaras Nedarim V'Dilo Kaddish My Nigmira Lo. And if he didn't do Maimer, if he didn't give Kesef Kiddushin to her, then what does it mean that, initially there was Zika and then there was Nigmara Lo, right? Mishe Basler Shuso. What exactly is he doing? So Tivshot Minek she also about Maimer. So clearly it's talking about where he did Maimer, right? And Rabbi Eliezer was saying that that when it comes to Yibum, there's already, prior to the Maimer, there's already a Zika. Now he does Maimer, certainly, and he gives Kesef Kiddushin, certainly he should be able to be made for the Nedarim. Okay, so that's how it's a proof for Reb Ami. And what does it mean when Rabbi Akiva says, and just like with other things, so too are Nedarim? So the Katani Amar Ravi, so says Ravi, Hachi Katani, this is what it means. Well, don't you admit, says Rabbi Akiva, that by a Naira Me'orasa, a betrothed Naira, if somebody sleeps with her, so then there's a Chi of Skila, and yet, when it comes to Shomeres Yavam, that's not the case. So therefore, says Rabbi Akiva, I'll say the same thing here, that while by Erisin there's Hafaras Nedarim, by Shomeres Yavam there isn't. Rav Ashi, Masnisanami Deika, says Rav Ashi, you can also infer this from our Mishnah, that it says, in Yavama Gemura Leisha, Kshem Sharusa Gemura Leisha, that a Yavama is not sort of connected to her Yavam, or Yavam, in the same way that an Arusa is connected to her Arus. That when it comes to an Arus and an Arusa, there are stronger connections. There's a Chi of Skila, there's also a Hafaras Nedarim, but when it comes to a Yavam and Yavama, there's no Chi of Skila, and there's also not going to be any Hafaras Nedarim. Friends, that was Daf Ayin Dal of Masechta Nedarim. We really had to take out our brains a shtickle on that page. We were thrown right back into Masechta Yavamas there, that we talked about what happens in a situation of Yibum. What's the connection? What's the Hafaras Nedarim situation between the Yavam and the Yivam? Rabbi Eliezer says that there is Hafaras Nedarim. Rabbi Yoshua says that, well, it depends. If there's only one Yavam, then there's Hafaras Nedarim, but if there's more than that, then there isn't. And Rabbi Akiva, that was Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Akiva says that there's no Hafaras Nedarim whatsoever. Friends, that was Daf Gimel of Masechta Nedarim. Hope you enjoy. No, that was Daf Ayin Dal of Masechta Nedarim. Hope you enjoy. Peace out.